Good evening, everyone. My name is Mrs. Ruth Marconi. I'm the Assistant Principal for Guidance, but I'm also a college placement counselor. I'd also like to add that I am fascinated by and passionate about college admissions, particularly because in the years that I've been doing it, I've seen an evolution, and I think it's important to share some of my observations with you as you are embarking on the college search process for your children, okay? So one thing I always say to the kids is that you have to shift your mindset a little bit, that the college admissions process is certainly based in academic pursuits, you know, your major, all those things. But what we don't really think about often is that on the other side of it, there's also a component that's a business. I was fascinated by this book, Excellent Sheep, when I read it a few years ago, because it really changed my perspective about how the colleges are operating and some of the things that they need to check off when creating an applicant pool. For example, if you just think of it in these terms, if a college needs to keep their admissions rate low, then they need to get a certain number of applicants every year. They're not particularly interested in the qualifications of those applicants. They just need a certain number of applicants in order to keep their admissions rate low. And this really kind of highlighted that for me. This was really interesting. This is called Who Gets In and Why? And the author of this book actually spent a year in admissions offices of 4 different colleges. And he kind of traces the application of a few students through the process. And in more than one case, he watched a student go from accepted to unaccepted to reaccepted, because the application goes to the admissions office, as well as the financial aid office, as well as enrollment management, excuse me, which seeks to shape the incoming class to make sure that all the college's needs are being fulfilled, whether that need is for a bassoon player or anything else. This book was very interesting. This one is about the price you pay for college and the lack of transparency in the financial aid process. Ron Lieber is actually actively trying to change that so that the process is more transparent, and you know, we're hoping that he's successful. And then this last one was the one I settled on this summer. It's called Never Enough. And I think that what happened over the past 20 or so years is that as colleges needed to maintain certain criteria, whether it was that low admissions rate or anything else, they began this holistic assessment that talked about things like well-rounded student, right? And so a lot of young people started rushing to make sure that they were well-rounded, that they were doing service and they're doing activities and they're an athlete. And those things matter, and students should be doing those things, but also for their own pleasure, enjoyment, and edification, not just because they're chasing admission to a particular college because, you know, Jeff Saligno's telling us it may not work. And so I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind when we're in a healthy place with doing activities and getting involved in outside pursuits, etc. And when we're really doing that in a way that becomes highly pressurized and, you know, creates anxiety and feelings of doubt in our kids. So if you're interested in the mental health aspect of college admissions, I would recommend this. And just some final thoughts. One of the things that I have found so fascinating about this whole concept is how things changed, particularly after COVID. We saw a tremendous move toward the South after COVID. I think probably A catalyst to that was when we had lockdowns in New York and there were videos of kids on the beach in Florida. But as a result of that, I think there are now a lot of opportunities for admission to schools in the Northeast. And many times people apply to schools because other people are applying and they're like, oh, that must be a great school, everyone's applying. But the fact of the matter is that 10 years ago, we had very few students applying to the University of Tennessee. And at our last college fair, that was one of the more crowded tables. So my suggestion is to kind of row your own boat and make sure that you're doing what you need to do for yourself, your child, your family. I know it's really hard not to get pulled into what everyone else is doing. In this book, she actually talks about the anthropological reasons why that's true. But this is an individualized process. Each person has to approach it based on, their interests, their intended major, maybe the kind of job they want to do in the future. And it's important to every once in a while stop and check and make sure that that's where you are with all of it. So if you ever want to talk, feel free to give me a call. I'm always open to talking about college admissions. As I said, I'm very interested in it. And if you're interested in any of these books, please let me know. I'll make sure I can get you the titles and the Amazon links, okay? Thank you very much. I hope you find this evening informative.
Good evening, juniors and junior parents. My name is Miss Erin Ronan, and I'm the coordinator of college placement. And today I'm going to start by going through with you what should you be doing now in the college process. So if we take a look here, we have some slides. And the first thing that I want to talk to you about is you're not applying to colleges this year, so what should you be doing now? First, you want to keep your grades as high as possible. So in your classes, this is the most important thing. Having as high grades as possible can really help you with admission. So focus this year on keeping your classes as high as you possibly can. Second thing you want to do is cultivate relationships with teachers so they know you when you ask for letters of recommendation. So you are not going to, tomorrow morning, start asking people for letters of recommendation. Later on this year, so usually in January, you're going to get some information about that part of the process, and you will ask some teachers at that time if they would be willing to write letters of recommendation for you. So when you go to do that, you want to make sure that you're not just a number in their class. You want them to know you a little bit more as a person, so maybe you start talking with teachers before or after school, or even just you participate more so that they really know who you are. And it's not just what grades do you get in their class. Next, we want to prepare for standardized tests. So you have your college prep class, and there are other resources like Khan Academy and other free resources you could use to make sure that when you take your SAT or ACT this year, you feel very ready for that and you can get the best scores possible. And then the last thing that we should be doing at this time is start researching colleges. And as you go through, as we go through this presentation, we're going to talk to you about how you can use Naviance to help you with that, but other resources that you can look at. We have our mini fairs this fall, so you should be definitely attending those and talking to as many colleges as you can. And if you have the opportunity to attend open houses at colleges or visit schools, that will help you to get a sense for what are you really looking for and what schools would be a good fit for you. Next, let's talk about test scores. So colleges will accept both SAT and ACT scores. And there are some colleges that are test optional right now. Now, the trend was during COVID that schools became test optional at that point. Some colleges have kept that, and other colleges are now starting to require tests from you. There is a website called fairtest.org, and we have a link to that on the homepage of Naviance that you can use to help you see which colleges are still test optional. But keep in mind that that is changing each year, so before you apply, you would want to check to see that policy again. But if you do have to send your scores, you can send either SAT or ACT scores. Colleges will accept either one. Some colleges are test blind. So for example, Catholic University, the University of California schools are test blind. And what that means is that even if you send your tests to the colleges, they will not look at them. So that's something you want to look into. The other thing that you might hear, a phrase you might hear, is test flexible. So test flexible would mean that you can send test scores, but there are different things that would fit into that. So maybe if you had SAT and ACT, you could send both or one, or there are some other test options that they have that you can send in place of the SAT or ACT. Let's talk next about the ACT exam. Now, please understand that as I talk to you about the ACT and the SAT exam, this is not the only time you're going to have access to this information. I want to give you a roadmap for what's coming up this year so that you can prepare yourselves for it in terms of prepping for the different tests and also be aware of when they're going to take place. But you will receive emails from us closer to the test date about how do you register and what to know for those exams. So this is just as part of a roadmap, not because you need to write this down and memorize this information right now. The ACT exam will be offered on Saturday, April 5th at Kellenberg Memorial High School. If you are planning to take the ACT exam on that day with us, you would register on the actstudent.org website, which is the ACT website, and you would want to do that by February 28th. Remember, closer to the date, we will send out information about this. Because this test is given only to Kellenberg students on that date, you do have to use a test center code to find that test. It won't just appear there. And that test center code will be 251100. Again, that information will be provided to you later on when it's a little closer to that date. Now, we always suggest that you take at least one ACT and one SAT in the spring. Check to see what you get on each of those, and then whichever one's your better test, we suggest that you then prep for that one and take it again in the fall so you can maximize your score. Even if you think you might go test optional, you want to take those tests because you want to see maybe you get higher scores than you think, and that could be really beneficial in an application. Or there are some colleges where higher test scores can give you scholarship money, so you don't know. So we always suggest take one ACT, one SAT in the spring, and then whichever one's your higher test, take that one again in the fall after you've prepped it and really tried to create a maximum score on that. Let's go next to the SAT exam. So we will be offering the SAT exam during the school day on March 19th. For that one, you are going to register through PowerSchool Parent Portal by February. So if you were to go on today, you can't actually do that. It's not open yet. You're going to get an email when registration for this test opens. So I am mentioning this to you so you know, okay, if I'm prepping for the SAT, by March 19th, I want to have all of my knowledge at that point, and I'm not mentioning it to you so that you register at this instant, okay? So you'll get further emails, so if you're always reading the college news notes and any emails we send out, that will have information about how to register both for the SAT and also for the ACT. Next up, let's just talk about if something's test optional, or you think a lot of your schools might be, should you take the SAT and the ACT, even if this is what route you might be going? And the answer is definitely yes. Until you take the test, you have no idea what score you're going to get. And this slide right here is a perfect example of why it might be good to send test scores anyway, even if they're not as strong as you hope they would be. So this is from Texas Tech, a college that posted their different scholarship amounts, which not all colleges do, but just to give you a sense of how different it could be if you send scores versus not, you can see here in the first column that we have a 4.0 or a 3.96, right? That range of GPA. If you submit your test score and it is 1,500 to a 1,600 on the SAT or 34 to 36 on the ACT, you would get $9,000 scholarship per year. Whereas if we look all the way down on the bottom, if you go test optional and have those grades, it's only $4,000 per year, which is a significant difference. And you can see that even if we go right above the test optional, 1,100 to 1,190 SAT, if you submitted those, would get you $5,000 a year. So there are schools where they might take that into account. And so taking the test scores so that you have them and can make the best decision for whether you should send them or not when you apply in the fall is really the best route to go, and not just the route of, well, I'm just not going to take them at all. Okay, so we always suggest one ACT, one SAT in the spring, and then take your better test a second time in the fall. So what are we going to talk about next? Well, I'm going to introduce Mrs. Gabrielle Steffen, who is our college placement liaison to the different colleges, and she's going to talk to you about prep for the rep. So if you are visiting colleges or if you are talking with college reps, what are the questions to ask and how should you prepare for that? So Mrs. Steffen?
Thank you, Ms. Ronan. At Kellenberg, I serve as the link between the high school and the college admission offices at colleges and universities. It's my goal to help students find a school that's a perfect fit for them. The best way to do that is to visit college campuses. You will want to start planning your college tours early. The best time to visit is during a holiday break, weekends, or the summer before your senior year. There are a few things to keep in mind when visiting. Once on campus, you'll receive a significant amount of useful information. I would recommend bringing a notebook to write down key facts, taking photos of the campus to reference later. You will be surprised how quickly you forget an institution. Here are a few things to remember when you arrive to a campus. Dress appropriately, arrive on time, and avoid being on your cell phone. To make the most of your visit, you want to ask the right questions, and it's good to include questions that you can't find online. You'll most likely remember a fun fact about an institution over a statistic. So here are some examples. What is your favorite place to eat on campus? What is a tradition your institution has? What do you do on the weekends? When you're touring a campus, it's a great idea to stop a current student and ask them about their experience or why they decided to attend that institution. Once you're on your tour and it has concluded, you should follow up with the college rep from our area. Be sure to ask them for their business card and follow up with an email or a personal thank you note. An example of an email for a college rep is on your screen. It will demonstrate interest and allow you to continue the conversation about the institution. Always include your full name, high school, year of graduation, and something you enjoyed about your visit. In your blue folder, you will find pros and cons sheet to help you determine what you're looking for in an institution. Before you go on your college visit, the college placement office will ask you to fill out a visitation form. Please go on the Kellenberg website, head to the Parents tab, and you will find the big blue button that says Parent Portal, leading you to Power School. On Power School, you'll be able to access the college visitation request form. You must fill out this form no later than 2 days before your visit. Some days that are the year that are not acceptable to miss are trimester exams. You will also want to get an official letter from the institution showing that you went on a college tour. You will bring that letter to the college placement office the following day. Both the form and proof that you attended a college visit will require for the absence to be excused. Now let's shift our focus to demonstrated interest. Demonstrated interest is when a student expresses interest in a particular institution. This includes and is not limited to a campus visit, an email, communication from them or from you, any action that you take to the institution that shows you're excited about the school. Requesting an interview is also a great way to show your interest in a school. If you look in your blue folder, you will see a list of interview questions. Fun fact, our college placement office is now on social media, which provides also helpful information and resources, including throughout the college process. You can follow us on our Instagram at KMHS_College Connection. Happy touring, and now I'm going to reintroduce Ms. Ronan.
Thank you, Mrs. Steffen. So now I'm going to talk to you about some other things that might come up in your college search process. So first of all, we're going to talk about military academies and ROTC. So military academies would be specifically the U.S. military academies, West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, Merchant Marine Academy, and Coast Guard Academy. So for those schools, when you apply to them, it's a little bit more involved than applying to regular colleges. Now, there are some other military academies out there, for example, like the Citadel, that's not specifically a U.S. military academy, where you would just apply like a regular college. But for these 5 that are listed here, the process is a little bit different than just applying to a regular college. ROTC would be Reserve Officer Training Corps, and this is offered at some colleges, and there are programs for ROTC for Navy, for Army, and for Air Force. And for those programs, ROTC, you would go to a regular college and you would do things like maybe twice a week you would have where you in the morning have to go to the training for becoming someone who's physically fit. So you'd have like your PT training twice a week, and you have an extra class where you're learning about military history or military operations or different things that you would need to know as an officer in the armed forces. But the scholarship would mean that you go to college for free, and then you would serve time after you graduate college. Now, the serving time after you graduate college would also be something that you would have to do if you attended one of the U.S. military academies, depending on what job you go into and what extra training you might have. So, for example, if you were going to be a fighter pilot, you're going to have more years of service that you would have to give back after you either do ROTC or go to one of the U.S. military academies than maybe if you're just going to go into infantry. So there's a certain amount of time that you would want to need to serve in the armed forces to pay back the free education that you got. You can use Naviance to help you figure out which colleges have ROTC programs, and we will talk about that when we're doing the college searches. And of course, if you ever forget that, you can always reach out to your counselor about how can you do that search if that's something that you're interested in. Now, when do I apply for these things? So for the U.S. military academies, application process starts in March of this school year. So in March, both West Point, Annapolis, and also the Coast Guard Academy, Kings Point, and the Air Force Academy, they will all have where their application will open and you can get started on the process. Usually you fill out a pre-application, you get some information about how this all works, and then you start plugging away at the different parts of the application. Something to keep in mind if you feel like you might be applying to a place like West Point or Annapolis or maybe to an ROTC program in the future. For both academies and ROTC, when you ask for letters of recommendation, which will be in January of this year, so we're not going to go out and start asking people for recommendations right away, okay? So when you go to ask people, you would need a junior math teacher and junior English teacher specifically for the application for West Point or Annapolis or any of the other academies. So those are the people you're going to want to ask, and they actually serve a great purpose for if you're applying to some regular colleges as well. If you are planning on applying to West Point, you would also need to ask your junior science teacher because West Point will specifically ask for math, science, and English teachers from junior year to provide recommendations for you. So those are some things just to keep in mind if this is something that you think you might want to do apply for in the fall and potentially attend as your college in the future. So now I want to talk to you about college sports. If you are looking to maybe play a D1, D2, D3 sport, or you're already being recruited for a sport, I want to make you aware that Mr. Dennis Graham is the NCAA coordinator for your class. Hopefully you've already been in contact with him, but if you haven't, he would be the person that you would want to reach out to. He can do things like send transcripts to coaches or, if you have any questions about the recruiting process, he can give you a little bit of guidelines of how you can handle that and what you should be doing at this point. So if you haven't already been speaking with him, I would reach out to him if you're already being recruited or plan to play a sport in college. His email is mrgraham@kellenberg.org. And the other thing that you would definitely want to do if you're looking to play college sports, especially, and I'm not talking about club sports or just, playing intramurals or things like that. So if you would be varsity level athlete at a college, you should really consider, if you haven't already done so, registering on the NCAA Eligibility Center. And that website is the one you can see on the screen right here. Just one thing with the NCAA Eligibility Center, there is a link to that in Naviance on your homepage. When you pull up your Naviance account, there will be something on the right side of your screen that says additional information from your school. And then there are a bunch of links to different websites there. And the NCAA Eligibility Center is there. Plus, you can just Google NCAA Eligibility Center and that will get you to the website as well. Next up, let's talk about searching for colleges. So that's a huge focus of what you should be doing at this point in your junior year. And you can definitely use Naviance to help you out with this. Some questions that you want to think about if you haven't already done so, and these would be good to speak about with your parents, are, do I want to stay local? Do I want to go away to school? If I do go away, how far is okay to go away? Is it something like a 4 to 6 hour drive? Or is it literally the whole entire US that you can go to? So make sure as a family that you talk about that and what you're looking for where the college should be located. What size college are you looking for? Would you prefer something that's the smaller size, where you have smaller classes, maybe something around Kellenberg size? Or are you looking for one of those really giant schools that have like 40,000 students and have a ton of options and you keep meeting a new person every day? So do you have a preference about that? And maybe you like both, that's okay. What can you afford? Now, there is something that is called the net price calculator that by law has to be on every college's website, okay? So I wouldn't just judge by a ticket price, because some of the ticket prices are like $80,000 a year, but that's not necessarily what you would have to pay to go to a college. So if you go to, for example, because Hofstra's across the street, let's say you're interested in Hofstra and you're wondering, how much would Hofstra cost me? You go to the Hofstra College website, you look for their financial aid page, which might be its own page, or it could be under their admissions office page, and you can just look for financial aid there. And then you look for something called the net price calculator. Now, sometimes that pops up right away. Like if you look at one of the SUNY schools like SUNY Stony Brook, I am sure you go on their financial aid page, net price calculator is going to be right there for you. And other schools that are a little bit more pricey, it would be hiding a little bit. So if you don't see it when you're on the financial aid page, go into the little search bar up top, because the colleges always have one of those, and type in net price calculator. The net price calculator will ask you specific questions about income and things like that, and then it will give you a ballpark figure of what you would have to pay to go to that college. So that's a little bit better judge than just judging by what the total cost of the school would be. Something else to think about, what majors does the college have? Are they majors that fit into what you are actually looking for? Also, are there other things the college needs to have? So like, are you looking for a Catholic college? Do you have certain sports that you would want to play? Are there certain activities that you really want your college to have? So try to think about the different things that you would really want your college to have, because then you can search for these things and see what colleges come up and would fit you best when you're applying next fall. So great thing about this, Naviance can help you find colleges with these qualities. And so I'm going to introduce Mrs. Marconi again, and she's going to talk to you about how you can use Naviance to help you find colleges that have the different things you're looking for.
Thank you, Ms. Ronan. I think it's important to refer back to what I said earlier in terms of the challenges that may present themselves when trying to curate a really good list. And so Ms. Ronan and I are actually going to walk through a list that we have prepared already, and I'll give you some context for why we chose them, and then how you can use Naviance to make sure that you are selecting a list of schools that's not only reasonable in terms of admission, but that may check off other boxes, such as the location or the anticipated scholarship, et cetera, okay? So, Ms. Ronan, let's see what you got here. When you log on to Naviance, this is the page that you land on. As you can see, there's all sorts of information on here. We're going to move over to the Colleges tab for the time being. You'll see many different drop-downs. On the far left, you'll notice that you can use Naviance as a search tool. You could put in things like geography, size, cost, admissions rate, major, and come up with a list based on that criteria. So that, takes some of the guesswork out of where do I start and how do I find a good list of schools. If you look in the next column, it gives you many options for researching colleges. It also notes colleges I'm thinking about, as well as maps, comparing schools, and it gives you information about college visits, schools that are visiting Kellenberg. The other columns we'll probably spend more time on later this year as the application process unfolds. So right now we're going to dive into colleges I'm thinking about. Now let's pretend that you ran a college match search, and this is the list that you came up with. You'll see that there are a variety of options here, from American University down in Washington, D.C., through something like Penn State University in Pennsylvania. We'll start by looking at my alma mater, which is Fairfield, as a way of just exploring some of the data that you can pull off Naviance. You'll notice, first of all, that the average net price for Fairfield is showing as $21,000, and you might be saying, yippee! However, the family income for that is a maximum of $30,000. So just like imagine that if you have income of $30,000, the net price is still $21,000. Let's move to greater than $110,000 as the family income, $40,878 for Fairfield. Another option, I think a data point that you should be aware of, is the graduation rate. Fairfield has a robust graduation rate. Fairfield is a private school, it's a Catholic school, it's a Jesuit school. And I said those in order on purpose. So there are private schools, and we have some of them on our list. There are Catholic schools, and then just like Kellenberg is run by the Marianist order, we are a Catholic school, but we are operating under the charism of an order. So too, the Jesuit universities are operated by the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, and they have a distinct charism. You'll notice here some other data about the acceptance rate and that it overlaps with 10 schools, all right? Let's go to the overview, scrolling down a little bit, Ms. Ronan. I think this is a really important part of the landing page for the schools because it tells you the size of the schools. So they currently have an undergraduate enrollment of almost 5,000. If any of you are familiar with Fairfield, maybe you have students there or have had students there, they're actually increasing the size of their enrollment. In the past, they really had been somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000, and they've pushed up to nearly 5,000 now. So again, just to summarize Fairfield, it's fairly close, it's small to medium-ish, it's Catholic, it's Jesuit. All right, now let's go take a look at something else and explore some other options. American University. American University is in Washington, D.C., and it's a private school, but it's not a Catholic school. You'll see again the net price calculator. You would want to flip that to whatever pertains to you, but if you have family income of more than $110,000, there's a significant difference in the cost. Notice that they list here their deadlines and the application plans. Again, we'll get into that more later in the year. Let's go to the Studies tab for American University. So you'll notice that American has a very low student to faculty ratio, and on this page you can get the top areas of study. You'll notice that American, as one would imagine, it's in Washington, D.C., really has a focus on things like social sciences, interdisciplinary studies, some business, some journalism. We're not seeing physician's assistant. We're not seeing things in the STEM field. It's not to say that they don't offer those things, but it's not the primary reason that most students attend. If you would like to see all the majors, you can simply scroll down on the Studies tab. All right, could we go back to the overview page on American, please? Thank you. So again, if we scroll all the way down, we're going to see that American is larger than something like Fairfield at about 8,000 students. And it's located in an urban center, and that's definitely something for you to think about. I mean, maybe you like the idea of living in a city. Some of you might like the option of a different kind of setting, maybe, rural or kind of suburban. All right, so let's take a look at something that would be very different from both Fairfield and American University, because they're both private schools. Let's look at Penn State. Penn State has been extremely popular the past few years. We've seen this trend toward bigger schools. Penn State, as its name implies, is a state school run by the state of Pennsylvania. And obviously, they prioritize Pennsylvania state residents. Having said that, they do have a robust admissions rate for Kellenberg students. If we scroll down on this main page, we're going to see that Penn State has 40,000 undergraduate students. So, you're really talking about a small city. Obviously, that has its upsides, right? Football games and painting your face white and tailgating. Also, you're going to find a very wide variety of majors at a school like Penn State. If we click on the Studies tab again, you'll notice that they have many areas of study, including things like engineering, and a vast variety of majors. Look at all, architecture, agriculture, all sorts of things. Again, because it's a state school. So Penn State would be definitely quite different than something like Fairfield or American. All right, so now let's go back and look at something like St. John's University. St. John's University has a very good relationship with Kellenberg. I should note that they often provide our students with merit-based aid, and they have the option of on or off-campus living. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it. You could certainly dorm at St. John's, but it is accessible if dorming was not for you. It's also a kind of green space campus and has access to an urban center, so in that way it's middle of the road. I do recommend that people go and visit St. John's just to get a sense of a school that's Catholic, large, access to an urban center, many different majors, and has some degree of a sports vibe on campus. So for this, let's look at the admissions tab. You'll see if we scroll down, this bar graph is very important because it shows you that for a long time now, Kellenberg has had a very, very significant number of students who apply. Last year, 227 Kellenberg seniors applied to St. John's. Of that 227, 217 were accepted and 31 enrolled. So if we look at that enrollment, we'll see that we had 31, 36, 42, and 38 enrolled over the last 4 years. And I think that's a function of the flexibility that St. John's offers, coupled with the aid that they offer our students. All right, so now let's look at the scatter plot down below. The scatter plot runs across the top as GPA, and then down the side as SAT or ACT scores, depending on the drop-down. We're set to SAT right now. Anything that's a green check mark means that the student was accepted. A green check mark with a box around it indicates that that was an early action applicant. So you really can cull a lot of data out of these charts. A red X, as you might imagine, means that the student was not accepted. And then the blue circles represent what's called a wait list. Wait listing happens after the admission cycle is complete. And again, we'll talk about that more down the road. I just wanted you to have a context for interpreting the data on this chart. To echo what's been said already, Sometimes the difference between a red X and a green check mark is demonstrated interest. So it is important for you to have the college that you're interested in know that you are perhaps visiting their campus or talking to their reps when they come to Kellenberg. That demonstrated interest is important. Okay, so you can see here what a scatter plot looks like and how to interpret the data. All right, now let's go back and do a quick pass over something like Tampa. I asked Ms. Ronan specifically to include Tampa because I think it's a good example of not knowing what you can't know. Tampa, as you can see, if we scroll down to this bar graph, has seen an incredible increase in the number of students who are applying. Now that's not just true from Kellenberg because a lot of kids are interested in the South now. Tampa has seen this tremendous uptick in the number of applicants. So it is important when you're looking at the scatter plots to take a look at the bar graphs as well, because you'll see that there's some really granular and important information. If we go back to 2022, right, which was right after COVID, although 90 students applied, only 20 were accepted. Again, that's because Tampa had seen a larger number of applicants and students who were enrolling in their school than they could really kind of handle, and so they had to make adjustments for that. In 2023, you'll see that the number of applicants remained high, but the number of accepted students from Kellenberg also increased, and last year we had 64 Kellenberg students accepted at Tampa. So as much as the scatter plots can reveal, it's good to look at that through the lens of the bar graphs as well. And then let me just take a look at a state university school for New York. We have Sunni Albany.
Didn't go on here. This is actually a great opportunity to show you one way that you can add a college to your college list. So if you go into the little search bar up top, we can put in Albany. And let's go to Sunni Albany. So let's see, University at Albany. And if you make the heart a color, that will add it to your colleges I'm thinking about list. You can also add schools if you do a Supermatch college search by doing the same thing. Anytime they have the heart next to the name, that's how you can add it to your colleges I'm thinking about list. Back to you, Mrs. Marconi.
Thank you. So Sunni Albany is a state school run by the state of New York. So they prioritize New York State residents. You would be getting preferential admission versus someone from out of state, which is the exact opposite of what I said about Penn State. SUNY has traditionally been doing a free application week, which has been very well received. I expect they'll continue to do that. And so we always recommend that students put at least 2 or 3 SUNY schools on their list, because at the end, when you're deciding on a college, you want that decision to be made in freedom. You want to be able to have an option that will, just by virtue of the model, be potentially less expensive. SUNY tuition for somebody who makes above $110,000 is $24,000. That does include room and board. So SUNY tuition is somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,000 a year. Possibly, and many students do, live off campus when the university allows it, and so that would have an impact on your overall cost. All right, so let's look at their admissions. If we scroll down, you'll see, especially when SUNY started doing the free application week, the number of applicants went up. Last year, you can see that 65 out of the 75 students who applied from Kellenberg to SUNY Albany were accepted, and 4 of them are currently enrolled. And you can see by the scatter plot that as a state university, they really do have better alignment with a GPA and test scores. They're not doing the kind of holistic assessment of an application that, for example, American University or Providence or Fairfield might do, because they're all private schools.
So I would just like to add, because I think we've been pretty comprehensive in how to use the information on here to help you see if a school is a good fit. Some other things that you would want to be aware of on Naviance in general, to try to get to that point of what schools am I looking for, and I had talked previously about you could find schools that have ROTC programs. In Supermatch, I think is that your favorite, Mrs. Marconi? That's my favorite match one to use. You can put in things like location, and if it's something where, you know, there's no way you can go outside of New York, you can put it in must-have, like we can see the first thing here, or you can put it in nice-to-have. If you look up top, things like institution characteristics, you can put in four-year school, things like that. Under different groups or student life, you can see that ROTC is listed here. So play around with that, and as we mentioned before, if you have a school that you really love, just make the heart a color and it will put it in that list so you can look even further into the school. Something else that I just want to point out, we do have under additional information from your school a bunch of links, and that will change as you go to next year. Things like, people always wonder, I get this question all the time, do you, Mrs. Marconi, as well?
Yes.
Scholarships, right? Where do I look for scholarships? You can see that there's a bunch of scholarship websites there. Now, please keep in mind that a lot of times you have to be a high school senior, so it would really be next year that you want to focus on that. But even things like FAFSA and the NCAA eligibility website, those are all located here as well. So please just keep that in mind, that there's always these links here that you can use. Yeah, so that's anything else that wanted to highlight?
I think that covers our tour of Naviance and has hopefully inspired you to play around a little bit. If you're anything like me, you'll be up late at night looking at the scatter plots and figuring out maybe, you know, why one outlier doesn't make sense and all that kind of stuff. But it's here for you to use, and it's something that you want to not allow to fall off your radar.
Yeah, so we thank you very much for your attention. You know, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to your guidance counselor or stop by the college placement office. You will get a college counselor in January of your junior year who will work specifically with you throughout the application process. So you can always write your questions down, but please feel free to stop by the college placement office if you think of something that we haven't covered in this presentation. And also know that in May we will have a webinar like this one where it will talk about how to apply to college. It's a little closer to when you're applying, that's why we do that one later. So right now, have fun searching, and remember, we're here for you if you have any questions. Have a great night.